Hey everyone, and welcome back to another great episode on the Hope and Renewal podcast. This is where faith meets real life and hard truths is held with compassion. Again, this is your favorite host, Antonio Banks. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope and pray that this message speaks to your heart, and if it does, that you do not keep it to yourself, but you will share it with somebody else. So we're diving into a topic that so many of us live with but rarely feel comfortable talking about. I remember sending a comment on my Spotify account and it said, "Why do you sound like you're crying?" I told them that the truth is always painful. And this is one of the episodes. It's called Grief. Grief is a life sentence. Grief, real grief, and lasting grief. The kind that doesn't have an expiration date. The truth is simple. Again, grief is a life sentence. It's not a punishment, not a curse. It's a reminder of love so deep that it changes forever. See, grief doesn't expire. It doesn't run out like a gallon of milk. It doesn't fade like an old bruise. It never follows the timelines people try to force on us. When you lose someone who shaped your life, who influenced your life, who made you who you are, you don't get over it. You learn to carry it. You learn to walk with a weight you never asked for. So somewhere along the way, people will tell you it will get better. And I get it. Most of them mean well. But a lot of those words come from people who haven't felt grief cut as deep as yours. See, they don't understand how a single moment in life can split your world into two parts, before and after. They don't know how silence can feel louder when the person you love is gone. They don't know that you can be driving down the road feeling okay, and then all of a sudden a song, a scent, or a memory grabs your heart like it just happened yesterday. And some of you listening right now, you know that pain intimately. You know what it's like to wake up and reach for someone who isn't there anymore. You know what it's like to hear their laugh, not in your living room, but only in your memory. Some days it's quiet. Some days it hits like it happened the moment it did. And on my hardest days, I still feel like I'm standing in the doorway of October 10th and May 23rd, stuck between the moment life changed, the life that kept moving without my permission. Even in that misunderstanding, I still pray that the people around me never have to experience this pain. One of the hardest lessons grief teaches us is this: everybody grieves differently. There is no right way, no timeline, and definitely not a checklist. Some people will cry, some stay silent, and some bury themselves in work. Some break down in the quiet moments when nobody sees. For some, grief comes like waves. For others, it sits like a weight. Some feel it immediately. Others won't feel it until months later, when the world stops checking on them. My grief, mine is quiet, but not silent. And I talk about mother and my father all the time here on the podcast and in my books. That's how I keep their memory alive. That's how I keep myself from drowning. My brother, on the other hand, his grief is completely different. He doesn't talk. He doesn't open up. He stays busy, always moving, always working, constantly distracting himself from the pain he doesn't want to confront. And that scares me. And that scares a lot of people because I know y'all have the same situation. Sometimes the loudest grief is the one nobody can hear. Sometimes the person who looks the strongest is the one carrying the heaviest silence. This is called silent grief. Silent grief hides different. It hides deep. In the corners of a person's soul, behind their routines, behind their jokes, behind their strength. It's not silent because it feels nothing. It's silent because it feels too much. And I've learned something. Grief doesn't only break us when we cry. It breaks us when we pretend we don't have to. See, there's another man I know, someone whose story has stayed with me for many years. He lost his mother, a profound, painful loss that already shook his foundation. And before he could even breathe again, before he could even begin healing, he lost his only son. 2 losses back to back. 2 pieces of his heart were taken before he could recover from the first blow. And how does that man survive that? How does anyone? There are no words big enough to wrap around that kind of pain. When you lose a parent, your past is shaken. When you lose a child, your future is shattered. This man carried both losses, yet, still, somehow, he keeps going. And it's not because he was strong, but it's because he had no choice. See, sometimes survival isn't loud or triumph. Sometimes survival is just waking up the next morning and trying again. Be strong doesn't mean being silent. And that's something we need to understand. Being silent doesn't mean you're strong. It's okay if the weight breaks you down sometimes. It's okay if the tears come out of nowhere. It is okay if specific memories hit harder on some days than others. There is nothing weak about a heart that loves deeply enough to hurt. When we hide our grief, we don't heal. We delay the heartbreak. Some hearts never open again because they spent too long pretending they weren't breaking. And you want to know something so powerful? Grief isn't new. It's not unfamiliar to God. It's not foreign to the Bible. Prophets grieved, kings grieved, warriors grieved, ordinary people grieved. Even Jesus Christ himself, the Son of God, was not exempt from sorrow. Jesus wept at the tomb of Lazarus. He grieved over Jerusalem. He cried out in agony in the Garden of Gethsemane. If the Savior of the world wasn't afraid to show emotion, why should we be? His vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was love. It was compassion. It was good. It was God showing us that grief is not something to hide. It's something that reveals the depth of our hearts. And let me remind you of something from John chapter 11. Lazarus was sick. Mary and Martha, people Jesus loved deeply, sent for him. Lord, the one you love is sick. Jesus didn't rush. He actually stayed 2 more days. And it's not because he didn't care, it was because God's plan was bigger than their moment of pain. See, by the time he arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. Martha said, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even through her pain, she still believed. See, Mary came next, fell at his feet, weeping, Lord, if you had been here. And here's the moment that shows the heart of God. When Jesus saw their grief, when he saw their tears, he was moved. He was troubled in his spirit. And then Jesus wept. He didn't weep because he lacked power. He didn't weep because there was no hope. He knew he was about to raise Lazarus. He wept because love feels. He wept because grief is real. He kept and wept because our sorrow matters to him. Then he spoke, Lazarus, come forward. See, grief may be a life sentence, but so is God's compassion. So is his presence. So is his promise that we do not walk through sorrow alone. And I want to close with this. So yes, grief hurts. It's painful. Yes, grief changes us. Yes, it becomes a part of our story. But we don't carry it alone. The same Jesus who stood at Lazarus' tomb, the same Jesus who cried, the same Jesus who understands sorrow, he stands with you. In your heartbreak, in your confusions, in your long nights, in your empty moments, he does not rush you. He does not tell you to move on. He does not judge your hearts. He sits in the pain with you until you can stand again. As you walk through your own season of grief, let me ask you this. Are you letting God walk with you through it, or are you trying to carry it all on your own? I want to thank you for listening to today's episode. This is the Hope and Renewal Podcast with your favorite host, Antonio Banks. If today's message spoke to you, share it with someone who might need it to be reminded. Grief is a life sentence, but so is God's love.